Columbia, Houston, good morning. Welcome to your first full day in space. And Rick, that last, the Blue Telescope by John Hyatt, was for you. Scooter, wanted to give you an update. The Hubble Space Telescope is over the South Pacific currently, about 8,000 miles behind you. You're opening at about 1,000 miles per orbit, which will have you lapping HST in about 1 day, 6 hours from now as Nancy moves in for the grapple.
And good morning, Houston. Thanks for your words on the big picture, and it's great to be here in space again.
Back to live downlink television now from the cargo bay of Columbia. Once again, looking from front to aft, the robot arm on the right side of your picture, and the rigid array carrier on the left side of the picture, which houses the 2 new solar arrays that will be installed on the Hubble Space Telescope. Those arrays to be installed on spacewalks 1 and 2 next Monday and Tuesday. Grunsfeld and Linehan to conduct the first spacewalk on Monday, Newman and Massimino to conduct the second spacewalk on Tuesday, and after the installation of that second solar array on Tuesday, Newman and Massimino will press on for the replacement of the reaction wheel assembly in the Hubble Space Telescope as well. Here in the Mission Control Center, the Payload Deployment and Retrieval Systems Officer, basically the robot arm operator, the robot arm officer here in Mission Control, reports that everything is looking very good in the checkout of that Canadian-built robot arm that will be used so extensively over the course of the next week. Robot arm operator Nancy Curry reporting to Capcom Mario Runco here in the Mission Control Center that she will be providing television views, this from the camera at the end of the shuttle's robot arm, zooming in on various components of the flight support system. That is the berthing and positioning system post. That post will be mounted at the base of the flight support system after the Hubble Space Telescope is mounted and latched in place by the spacewalkers John Grunsfeld and Rick Linehan at the beginning of their first spacewalk on Monday morning. Basically, it is a post that will rigidize the flight support system to prevent any EVA or spacewalking activity or orbiter activity from imposing any vibrations on the telescope during the servicing tasks themselves. Those solar arrays, although about twice as heavy as the current solar arrays on Hubble, will generate far more electricity, and unlike the current arrays that roll up like Venetian blinds, these arrays open up like a book into 2 sections, 1/3 the size of the current arrays on the Hubble Space Telescope. Because they are 1/3 the size, they'll also provide less drag on the telescope, thus preserving its altitude for a longer period of time. The new arrays that you're looking at the moment are, once they unfold, these 2 sections, which unfold like opening a book, are about 25 feet long and are about 8 feet high. Columbia Commander Scott Altman looking out of the overhead windows as the robot arm cameras look in on Columbia's crew at the aft flight deck. Altman now joined by Jim Newman at the aft flight deck as the crew continues to pore over all of its instrumentation as they conduct the survey of the payload bay and all of the support equipment in the cargo bay in preparation for the retrieval of the Hubble Space Telescope. Now, this split screen view showing the operation of the flight support system. That is the wheel-like structure, the circular structure at the rear of Columbia's cargo bay, which will be rotated upward basically into a horizontal position to serve as the work platform for the telescope once it is mounted on that platform tomorrow morning.
Copy that, Mario. The pivot up is going smoothly. 37-minute gap. We'll pick you up at 22:43.
Good copy, John. See you then.
Payload Commander and Mission Specialist John Grunsfeld reporting that all going well with the rotation of the flight support system that you see on the left side of this split screen view. Again, the engineering teams that have been formed to analyze this reduced flow of Freon in loop number 1 in the cargo bay of Columbia are pulling together a story that provides growing optimism that there will be no impact to the mission to service the Hubble Space Telescope. Last night, Shuttle Program Manager Ron Dittemore said that he was very optimistic that the stabilization of the flow rate in Freon Loop number 1 will result in the mission proceeding to its full duration of 11 days. But another story will be told at the mission management team meeting at 12 noon Central Time today to firm up all of the engineering analysis and the rationale for pressing ahead with a full duration mission.
As you can see, Columbia is a little bit crowded right now. We've got some of the suits out, and we're getting ready to go to work, making sure that they're all set when we need them.
Again, on the far right, John Grunsfeld. In the middle, Rick Linehan. That is the spacewalking team for the 3 of the 5 spacewalks that will be conducted to service the Hubble Space Telescope on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of next week. Spacewalks 1, 3, and 5. Spacewalk number 1 by Grunsfeld and Linehan will be designed to replace the starboard solar array on the telescope with a brand new one. The new solar arrays, 1/3 the size of the current arrays. They weigh twice as much, but will create less drag on the telescope to maintain altitude and will provide far more electrical capability to power all of Hubble's scientific equipment at the same time.
Digger's been working very hard at getting his photo TV corner all set up, and the flight deck is starting to look neat but crowded.
Columbia's pilot, Dwayne Carey, nicknamed Digger, and Commander Scott Altman, nicknamed Scooter, up on the flight deck, the aft flight deck, which will be the center of much activity, now joined by flight engineer and prime robot operator Nancy Curry. Curry will be at the controls along with Altman. Altman flying Columbia manually up underneath the telescope. Alongside of Altman will be Curry at the controls of the shuttle's robot arm on the right side of the aft flight deck tomorrow morning as she reaches out to grab the telescope with a 50-foot remote manipulator system. Carey will actually be seated in the commander seat up front on the flight deck as he monitors Columbia's systems and calls out range and range rate towards Altman, who will be looking out of the overhead windows on Columbia very much as he is doing right now, as he looks directly up at the base of the telescope, which will be canted at about a 35-degree angle in preparation for its grapple.
What the status of the mission is right now? What do you think is the chance you're going to be able to stay up there and do what they have in mind for you?
Well, I think things are looking pretty good. Of course, the mission management team is going to meet today, this afternoon, and make some final decisions about what to do with this. So far, everybody's been looking very hard at it, trying to make the right decision, and I think everyone's feeling, we might say, cautiously optimistic. However, you know, safety is the first thing, and we're going to make sure that everything we do is done safely.
Okay, would you talk a little bit about just some of what's involved with grabbing hold of the Hubble and starting to work on it? It's in fact quite dangerous to go out there and do some of these things, isn't it?
Well, there's a wide range of activities that have to be done to support all the work that we're going to do on Hubble. And you're right, it is a jam-packed mission. We've been working very hard, basically from the moment we got into space until right now, trying to get the vehicle ready, our spacesuits ready, and all of ourselves ready for the rendezvous, which takes place tomorrow, and then the subsequent 5 days of spacewalks. They are demanding spacewalks. It's a very unforgiving environment. You need to make sure that you take every precaution and do the right thing, and that's what we have in mind. John is the payload commander, and he's going to be basically leading the spacewalk, so I can turn it over to him for that portion of the question.
Okay, Dr. Grunsfeld, why don't you tell us, you'll be outside for that first EVA. Tell us when that is and what will you be doing on that first one?
Well, I think in Chicago it starts approximately Monday night at midnight, and so folks who work hard all day, if they have any energy left, hopefully they'll stay up and watch a little of the spacewalks on NASA television. But the first spacewalk, we're going to get the payload bay ready for all the subsequent spacewalks, and then the big task, which will be quite a good visual treat, will be to install a set of new solar arrays. We're going to put one site on the first day on the Hubble telescope. And so if all goes well, we'll roll up the old ones the night before and then swap out the flexible arrays for some new rigid arrays. And then we'll carry that on to EDA-2 with Jim Newman and Mike Massimino. But before, let me just pass it on to Nancy for a moment, because before we can even start any of the Hubble EVAs, we have to capture Hubble with the arm. And I think you asked about that just a little earlier.
Yeah, let's do that. Dr. Curry, good morning to you. And why don't you tell us, also, when you're operating the arm out there, you have an astronaut at the end of the arm, don't you?
Yes, sir, I do, and this won't be the first time. This will be my third flight, actually, that I've flown a crew member on the end of the arm, and it's always an exciting treat, and it's a great pleasure to be able to work with such professionals on this team. I flew my last flight with Dr. Jim Newman, who will be one of the spacewalkers. I've worked closely with John before, and we've really been training hard over the last year. I'm really looking forward to it.
When the coolant loop problem first occurred, did your stomach sink? How worried were you that you'd wind up with a shortened mission?
Well, it got our attention at first, although I thought it might just be a minor problem. It wasn't apparent right at first what the impact was going to be. Since that time, we've been kind of thinking about the mission and just hopeful that we can square everything away and go on to perform what we came here to space to do.
The shuttle program manager said the situation looked gloomy at first, and that's his own word, gloomy. Is that how you described the mood aboard Columbia yesterday?
Well, to be honest, we've gone on the assumption that we're here to stay, that we're going to do our job, and we've just kind of kept that thought foremost in our minds. There's been so much to do to get ready for the spacewalks, the rendezvous and the spacewalks, that we've just kept ourselves busy and tried not to think about it since we don't have much control over it. So we'll wait and find out what the final decision is, but till then, we're charging ahead full speed with our eyes on the goal.
The shuttle Columbia is the oldest space shuttle. The last mission, I think, was 3 years ago, and that mission got a little hairy. There was some trouble there. Does that concern you, especially with this latest problem?
Well, folks spent the last 2 years working on Columbia, going over it with a fine-tooth comb, and I think overall Columbia is in great shape. We'll take a look at this problem and see after we get back what caused it and take steps to prevent it in the future.
Your mission this time is to retool the Hubble telescope. What exactly are you going to be doing?
Actually, when we're done with the telescope, I think it's fair to say the telescope will be better than new. We're going to put a whole new power system on board with new solar arrays that'll generate more than 20% power for the 20% more power for the telescope. The super exciting part is going to be the addition of the advanced camera for surveys, and it's like buying the top-of-the-line digital camera. It'll be able to do more in less time than anything else that's been on Hubble, and so I think the really great discoveries that'll come out of Hubble are those that are yet to come. And then we're also going to put a cooling system on a camera that was put on in 1997 to bring that instrument back to life. And so overall, it's a mission that's a combination of improving the engineering on Hubble to make it last another decade, and also a lot of new science.
What exactly is the Hubble? I mean, we know it's a very powerful, extraordinary telescope, but what does it do for the United States here? How is it helping us?
Well, the Hubble is not just a scientific instrument, although on that score, it's certainly the most productive scientific instrument ever produced by humans. It's also, in a sense, an icon of science. And so students all over the world, and especially in the United States, get to log onto the web, get to learn about astronomy and science in textbooks. And so it's really a tool of inspiration. But it's also developed a lot of technology in producing the instruments that have caused new revolutions in some ways in medical research and in optics research that are helping Americans all over.
Nancy, I see you sitting back there. You're being very quiet. What's it like as a woman in space? You're with a bunch of guys. How do you, I mean, this might be a sort of a naive question, but how do you change? How do you do things that, you know, I guess the opposite sexes need to do away from each other?
Well, I think each one of us considers this sort of like a big camping trip, and we just kind of are out there in the field, as it were, in this case several hundred miles up, and pretty much from the time you go to bed, or from the time you get up in the morning to the time you go to bed, you're at work. And as far as privacy, you know, even we are a little bit surprised how crowded it is this time with the airlock inside, and 6 of probably the biggest guys in the office, and then the littlest person in the office. But we can still have some privacy here and respect each other's privacy.